Hello YouTube, this is Turan and you just witnessed the opening of Grey Goo. I'll be covering this brand new RTS that came out just today. As you can see, even in small details like that opening, really sucks one in. And I'll be covering why Grey Goo not only garnered my attention, but really sucked me in into not only its uh, throwback to 90s RTS gaming, but also it's new, I would say, very brand new franchise that they're building here. And gameplay focused on more macro versus micro play, really distancing itself from the likes of StarCraft 2. And it's just very refreshing to see a brand new high production AAA RTS game from developers other than StarCraft 2. But don't be misled. These developers are actually oldies that you well remember from the likes of Command and Conquer. A lot of them came from that series, and I love that series. But to cover Grey Goo, I'm gonna be doing a let's play of all of the campaign. It's 15 missions, 5 missions per race. That's just almost a little on the small side, I would say. But the production values make it all worthwhile. I haven't finished the campaign yet. I just started, but I'm already very hooked. So already you've heard two reasons why Grey Goo attracted my attention. First, the team behind it, Petroglyph, was a lot of their core team members are from Command and Conquer series, which I love. I played all the Command and Conquer games, Tiberian Sun, uh, Dread Alert 2 and 3, Uprising, Tiberian Wars 3, and Kane's Wrath. I really like Tiberian 3, Tiberian and Kane's Wrath, actually more than Red Alert 3. And I'll get to that later. And uh, and also General 0 Hour. I was actually an alpha tester for Command and Conquer game, which was like a new Journals 2. Unfortunately, that game did not pan out, not because art or graphics were not that great, but just the gameplay was just not functional. The GLA and China factions did not work as intended. Even there were some issues with a lot of EU tanks and so on. But that's another issue. It just Petroglyph come from Command and Conquer. So a lot of people are saying that Grey Goo is like Command and Conquer StarCraft 2 had a baby. I would argue it's its own beast, and I'm gonna argue that point through a lot of YouTubers are analyzing Grey Goo through the prism of StarCraft 2, and uh, that's a fair criticism. But I want to look at StarCraft 2 races through the prism of Grey Goo races. So, but before I get into that, I want to give a brief primer. This video is a brief primer. What is Grey Goo about, and what pulled me in? So I first covered that the team is solid and and very trustable or trustworthy because they've worked in previous Command and Conquer. Even though there were some Command and Conquer flops, but overall the series is great, and I still think it's very strong. The second is high production values. WETA Workshop works on the cinematics for this. And I've seen only a few on Mission 1, Mission 2 cinematics, and I was blown away. I say it's on par with StarCraft 2's, or actually better. Why? Because they reach near photorealistic levels. WETA Workshop worked on stuff like on the last Hobbit movies. If you've seen the last Hobbit movie, where the huge battle with dwarves and elves and orcs, you know what I'm talking about. And the way the workshop also did Iron Man, like clothing, armors, and Goblin from the latest Spider-Man movie. They're just very great on special effects, and they translated that into building this new world. And so the production values are very high. It feels like a very polished game in the sense of art and display. I'm not sure about the functionality and gameplay balance. That's to be seen through campaign and playing more of the game. But already it's proven that it's a job for me for the team and the high production values. It's just pretty to look at. It's so let's cover two major reasons. Now, while I love Tiberian Sun universes and Red Alert and StarCraft, it's building its own universe, and for the first time ever, I've long had this thought: why putting in under RTS the human faction as the most technologically advanced? And they actually do that here. That's one of the things that really drew me from a lore perspective. The humans are the most technological faction, and I think very realistically, the human faction is 99% of their units are robots. They're probes, they're bots, they're drones. Only one unit, the ultimate epic unit, has a human inside it. I find that not only hyper realistic, but at the same time true. Like, we already go in that direction. The last aircraft to be piloted by manned piloted in the United States Army is going to be the F-35. Everything after that is drones. You don't need actually, due to the inclusion of G-forces and so on, your aircraft would be worst suited to have a human pilot. So that direction is very true, that we're going to UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, and I like that the human faction is the most technologically advanced, very exclusively drone heavy, and almost like it's so sterilized that it feels alien to us. The most human faction is actually the beta, the alien faction, which is like the underdog. And this theme of the alien underdog and the human belligerent or aggressor has only been really explored very recently through movies like Avatar. But Avatar itself is not original. If you go look at Ferngully, The Last Rainforest, or even in 2009 there was another film called Battle for Terra. I'm not sure if you remember it. I'm gonna splash an image of it. But these movies display humans as in the dominant technological superiority, not situation, but like prowess versus the aliens as underdogs. Even an earlier film sort of reminds me of Beta, even by looks, is Toy Soldiers. If you remember, I'm also gonna splash a screenshot. So when you look at that, those kind of narratives I found very least explored, and that we get a whole campaign on that, I find very interesting, and so that new franchise, building your own races and scenario and universe, which WETA Workshop I heard had a lots of help in, I really admire and respect, and it is a huge risk. A lot of people saying that they find the race is bland. I wouldn't say so. Given that they're from Command and Conquer background, I see a lot of similarities, and I'll touch on about them more. But I still think it's a pretty standalone franchise that could stand on its own 2 feet. So now let's go to the gameplay. The biggest thing is StarCraft 2's micro versus Grey Goo's macro. I, for one, when I play StarCraft 2, when I play as Zerg, for example, and I love spreading my creep, building bases, but don't let me get started on infested play. I know to improve as a StarCraft 2 player, I need to master infested play, but it's just I don't find it fun or exciting to manage my infestor mana and pop those cooldown like abilities. And also, I do not find that I find actually StarCraft 2 has less army composition diversity. Why? Because there's some units with some abilities, if one's paired with some abilities, that you only need that 1 or 2 units, and that's it. That's all diversity you have. For example, Blink Stalkers. You can with enough micro, and with enough macro, enough stalkers on the field, you only need just a huge Blink Stalker army to annoy your opponent until his eyes bleed into submission, into a defeat. I don't know, that kind of play should be respected and admired. Yeah, that is innovative, or other innovations like using siege tanks, drops like Terrans. But that micro play, only a few of us really master it, and only a few of us really uh, not appreciate it. We all appreciate it. We all like. That's why we watch StarCraft 2 uh, a gameplay, but it's not appealing, I'd say, to the vast majority of us, or to the majority, like even who I can get to platinum and gold leagues, but not higher, unfortunately. Uh, so I'm always looking for my brother, especially my brother who plays even less than me, to enjoy an RTS and just have fun with it, building large armies, matching together, free for all or allied, is what I think StarCraft lacks. StarCraft 2 doesn't usually have huge armies because it tries to. You don't want your an opponent to ever have huge armies. In Grey Goo, while that's the case, you're more likely to have large armies. And why? Again, the difference between micro and macro. In Grey Goo, no unit has any abilities, so no ability can be abused. StarCraft 2, due to those abilities, some of those abilities can be abused, and you exclusively almost focus on that unit. If you were to do the same in Grey Goo, that unit, because it has no potential abusable abilities, uh, it can be easily countered by its counter. So I feel like in Grey Goo, I'm not sure if this will pan out that way. It will be more of a seesawing confrontation. So you start with one army, usually at the beginning just light. You try to counter that. The opponent tries to counter that light with heavy, but then the other side with artillery, and then the first guy tries to counter the other guy's artillery by getting to close range and eliminating that threat. But it's more of a seesawing action where if you just focus on one unit, it's easily counterable and fastly counterable because your factories in Grey Goo can be set to produce. You can do the same in StarCraft 2, but in Grey Goo's macro-specific drive focus, you almost ought or have to have at least two of your factories always constantly creating at least your light units, so then you always have units on the field. Otherwise, if you don't do that in Grey Goose case, you will not keep up with the losses. So in that case, I really like that Grey Goose units do not have any abilities, because in StarCraft 2 there are some units that can cover up their weaknesses by their abilities and in conjunction with their numbers. In Grey Goose, you cannot, with one unit type, cover up for its weaknesses completely. Even with researchers, for example, unit that is an artillery, that is anti-air, but could be made against ground, but it's still you're vulnerable to ground. If you even do that upgrade, that one unit probably will not do enough damage. So it feels more like you have to keep constantly revising and adding your counters in your army composition force. So that's what I hope. So okay, so I cover the macro versus macro. The really anti-macro stance of Grey Goo that rewards this sort of constant streaming of units to the front lines, because they're going to be lost. They don't have. It feels like they don't have much HP, but at the same time, because there's a lot of counters, and it's very counterplay and hopefully more of a seesawing action. Now, lastly, I will describe StarCraft 2 races using Grey Goose races. So let's take StarCraft 2 Zerg. I would argue that Grey Goose faction, of course, fits very well. There's a lot of comparisons to be made. They're both alien in nature. They're both very mobile. But I would argue that it's a combination of Goo and human. You say, well, but how is StarCraft 2 human in the Goo sense? In Grey Goose universe, humans are very centralized. In StarCraft 2, they're very nomadic. You can move your buildings, barracks, command centers. Here in Grey Goo, you have to build on your electrical grid system, and it's very centralized. And some players say it's vulnerable. I would argue not. Just like StarCraft 2 Zerg offset, they have to build their hatcheries, their hives on the creep. Similarly, humans have to build Grey Goose. Humans have to build their structures on the grid. So in that sense, they're very centralized. StarCraft 2, to have internal balance, they make a lot of Zerg units fast or cheap or and mass produced to offset their hive structure. They're very centralized in nature. In Grey Goose case, humans are sort of like Zerg in the sense that they have the centralized structure of building on the electrical grid, but with teleportation, they can swiftly move their turret defenses from one end of their grid to another. So, for example, you have most of your turrets on the east, and the enemy attacks from the west. You can teleport them out on the west. So you build your grid lines with redundancy in mind. That is a macro level consideration, not a micro one. The micro is maybe just the teleportation itself, but the macro level of how you build your grid and to make sure that you can move your turrets to where they're needed, that is a macro level decision, and I love that. And another thing which I love with humans, you can have almost all your turrets and base defenses concentrated wherever the impact hits. So you don't have to build you don't have to cover all of your entrances or exit points. You can just teleport wherever the attack is coming from. And can you do that with Zerg? No, you cannot. Because if you uproot your spore crawlers, your spine crawlers, you make them vulnerable, one, and you make them very slow. No teleportation. So in that case, I really find the human faction very well balanced in terms of where they are centralized. They're vulnerable to that centralization. If you get one cross-sectional grid location, you can power down half or more of the base. But because you can teleport your defenses around, you can defend those points much more than I would say even any other race in Grey Goo and any other race even in most RTSs. Yeah, so in that sense, Zerg are kind of like humans and the Goo itself. Now, how about Protoss? Protoss are very actually like the Beta, in a way that the Beta are not as technologically advanced, but Beta built these hubs from where you can build more refineries or factories or attachments, which feels like a Protoss pylon, but with like a Terran like attachment add-on system. So it's a very unique mix, I think. So it's nothing new seen, but that mix, how they make it work, that's a novelty. So Protoss are more like Beta with some Terran add-on attachment play. What else? Yeah, Protoss at the same time are like humans because they're the most technologically advanced. Their units look more like sleek, oblong, oval shaped, like most of Protoss architecture, which is kind of weird seeing it on humans, but at the same time makes sense. If you've seen any latest cars or hybrids or Teslas, we're going that way. Interestingly, human civilization and engineering architecture is becoming more Protossy than is becoming like Dawn 40K like humans. And in that case, actually, the Beta, the Grey Goose Beta, the alien race, the underdog race, is actually more akin to like StarCraft 2's Terrans or Dawn of War 40K because they're very industrial. There's like fires, steam, so on coming out from their buildings, and you can actually see most of the Beta piloting their units. Here is an interesting thing. What struck me is that Beta's units, they have a lot of striders. Even their tank is like a strider, it's like a mechanized suit. Very animal like their name. Well, they're like Avalanche. Well, Avalanche is not an animal, but like naturalistic. But they're like Predator, Guardian. They look like mech chickens to me from Command & Conquer. So there's a Command & Conquer or reference which I see. The Beta, they look like Command & Conquer, Tiberian Sons, Juggernaut. What else? Juggernaut, Mammoth. Like the Guardian unit for Beta looks like a Mammoth from a Command & Conquer. So that's to be expected, but at the same time I like that Beta's tank looks like a mechanized strider. So it's not a tank per se, but that's their tank. Another thing which I really like about Grey Goo, which I think will be uh, will be very easy to learn but hard to master is they're building everything on ERT system. So basically, it plays like a MOBA, but with strategy. So like with Dota 2 or Legends, uh, so you can easily with QQQ you can get to your buildings. With QWE you can get to your like light units, heavy units, air, and like wall QRQ or something. So you can within 3 strokes you know you have what you want, and I I I like that because it's very easily learned more than actually the StarCraft 2 system, which is different for each race. Actually, what I did for StarCraft 2 I did the QRT system for all races, and it's basically like that, only even more understandable. So I like that MOBA-esque control and UI, and you'll see that in the campaign. Um, yeah, so I think I've covered the micro versus macro, the differences, how they're through the prism of gray goo. Last thing which I will cover is basically in briefly what are the races. So humans are the most technological one. They're like, and they actually sent out nanotech probes deep into space to observe and report. But when those probes came back, they were the goo, the nanotech. And where the gray goo term comes from is actually from a lot of literature on a doomsday scenario but a doomsday scenario for planet Earth. But this is like a doomsday scenario for the whole universe. So they're upping the stakes. And the beta are basically like the Avatar, the Navi people fighting for their survival, but they're not like in feudal ages. They're actually more industrial age. So it makes for a very interesting interplay, and I would like to see where the campaign goes. And I'm not sure by the lore if the goo are the silent ones or the humans are the silent ones, because humans have retreated back to Earth, so they're silent to the other races. They only see probes and drones, and they're silent. So that's what the beta have been running from the silent ones. So I'm not sure who the silent ones are, humans, goo, or maybe a fourth faction. But that's what the campaign is to answer. And I'll jump into the campaign. Let's play, starting with next video. This is Turan signing out. Peace out. Take care.